Black Panther is quite removed from the rest of the MCU. It barely features any of the main players or even mentions them by name, which is a good thing because you don't have to consume the entirety of this franchise to enjoy the film, thankfully. But it also stands apart in tone and themes. The closest thing you can compare it to is Thor Ragnarok, but even then, that movie is quite different than what came before it. Both films' plots are something that you would see in your standard epic fantasy story. A prince imbued with special abilities must ascend to the throne and become his nation's protector from forces that wish to destroy it. And of course, magic.
Not by magic, by technology.
T'Challa inherited the opportunity of becoming Wakanda's ruler, but he had to earn it first. By doing this, he chose to inherit the legacy of all the Black Panther rulers that came before him. The good as well as the bad of his ancestors' actions, and what that means for Wakanda moving forward. This is how T'Challa's arc is in parallel with Eric's. They both must deal with the consequences of their father's actions. Eric too has inherited his father's Wakandan heritage and royalty, yes, but because of N'Jobu's actions that led to him being killed, Eric thus inherited his father's punishment by being indirectly exiled from Wakanda. It is often said that vengeance is selfish because it is about personal retaliation, whereas justice is about restoring the balance. Whatever the case may be, vengeance and justice are two sides of the same coin, with some of the key characters in Black Panther are choosing which side they fall on. The events of Black Panther took place in a very short time. We are talking like maybe a week or two, right after the events of Civil War. Now, I'm not a big expert on the MCU timeline, but poor T'Challa, he's had a hard couple of weeks. He has just lost his father, and that emotional wound is still very fresh. And even though he could kill Claw very easily, T'Challa must put aside his personal grievances because he made a promise to his people to bring him to justice. And his actions represent and impact all of Wakanda.
These items aren't for sale.
How do you think your ancestors got these? You think they paid a fair price? Or did they take it like they took everything else?
I love that scene. Just loved it. The topic of whether items that were stolen from Africa should be returned to their places of origins has been an ongoing subject. I know that I have talked about it for years. And the answer is very simple. Yes, give them back. They were stolen. Back in 2015, there was an Englishman called Mark Walker who had inherited his grandfather's possession, bronze statues that were looted from the Kingdom of Benin, which is now modern-day Nigeria. Walker chose to return the items to Nigeria, specifically to Prince Edun Akezua. In a way, you can say this was him rejecting his grandfather's legacy of pillaging and colonialism. There was an article on the BBC that I'll link in the description. The minor villain, Ulysses Claw, is supposed to represent colonialism and racism. Even the fact that he's a white South African is not a coincidence, and is meant to call to mind the South African apartheid. It's not subtle. Claw outright calls the Wakandan savages, which we all know is the go-to coded word that racist characters use in film and television when you can't really use a slur.
The savages.
Something interesting to note is that the color blue is supposed to represent the colonizer.
This is one of our villains here. And this is Ulysses Claw, the color blue. The color blue represented colonization.
Claw wears it, Agent Ross wears it, and so does Eric Killmonger. But why is this? The racism that Eric Killmonger endured just by living in America and being part of the US military, a big pillar in neocolonialism, he wants to replicate that type of power structure in Wakanda, instead of dismantling the power structure altogether around the world. This point is driven home when Eric says the all-too-familiar quote,
"The sun will never set on the Wakandan Empire."
The border tribe are also wearing blue, and they are the ones who come to join Eric. I speculate the reason why they side with him is because by being at the border, they are the ones who are hit first with everything compared to the rest of Wakanda. They had to deal with the Arab slave trade and, the scramble for Africa and all these other types of colonial entities. And no doubt the border tribe suffered casualties. Wakabi's parents were murdered and that pain is still fresh. But I'll get to Wakabi in the next video.
I will give no Jabari lives towards your cause.
It is our cause. It is for all of us.
Oh, us. Us, you are the first king to come here in centuries, and now you speak of us.
The ethnic groups of Wakanda seem to all get along, with the exception of the Jabari tribe, who have isolated themselves. Shuri was surprised to see them and had to get confirmation that these were indeed the Jabari, meaning that in her 16 years of life, she has only ever heard of them but never seen them before. The Jabari have their own separate culture, religion and language, while the other tribes speak Kosha and have a South African type accent.
Ukuba uphinde wakuchukumisa ndakunqoma apha.
The Jabari have a Nigerian-style accent and are speaking Igbo.
We have watched and listened from the mountains.
This could possibly be a callback to an earlier Black Panther comics where the Wakandans spoke a different Nigerian language, Yoruba and Hausa. Apart from the Jabari, I get a sense that there may be some resentment that the border tribe may have towards the other tribes. This may have contributed to them aligning themselves with Killmonger. With the Wakandan Civil War over, and whatever the aftermath of Avengers 4 could be, I would hope to see how the relationships among the tribes would be like in Black Panther 2. Whether people harbour some animosity towards the border tribe now for their betrayal against the king, and whether or not the Jabari are accepted fully into Wakandan society. Black Panther spoke about the division of people within the African diaspora may feel. Eric, a Black American who has grown up experiencing institutional racism and anti-Blackness, he has ties to Wakanda through his father, making him second generation. And for second generation children, the culture of that of our parents may seem like an arm's length away, or an entire world away. So it is unsurprising that Eric connects more with his mother's side of the family and African American culture, since that's what he grew up in, of course. Even when he dies, he still strongly identifies with his African American ethnicity and the legacy of slavery.
Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.
To further understand Eric, one must understand the concept of racial fictive kinship that people within the African diaspora share, despite any ethnic, national or cultural differences or misunderstandings.
I took life from my own brothers and sisters right here on this continent.
To Eric, Black people, no matter the ethnic, national or cultural differences, are a global family, and Wakanda has abandoned that family, the same way his own blood-related family abandoned him. As for Wakanda, a country that did not endure slavery and colonization, there is no need for the concept of fictive kinship in a racial sense. Now, they may have that kinship towards their tribe, or even fellow countrymen and women.
Sister Nakia, my prince, we are home.
But fictive kinship in a racial sense may be tougher to understand for Africans who have lived their entire lives in countries where the colonizers didn't stay. For Wakandans, they know that they are Black, but that is not an everyday identity. This quote from Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie can probably help explain what I mean. My point is, the only authentic identity for the African is the tribe. I am Nigerian because the white man created Nigeria and gave me that identity. I am Black because the white man constructed Black to be as different as possible from his white. But I was Igbo before the white man came. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it is impossible for Wakandans, or any other Africans for that matter, to understand and grasp racial fictive kinship, because that is represented through Nakia. Nakia's missions help other Africans, and it is through her words and actions that help T'Challa decide what to do with Wakanda's future, and embrace an aspect of Pan-Africanism.
Share what we have. We could provide aid and access to technology and refuge to those who need it. Other countries do it, we could do it better.
I know a lot of people like to attribute all of this to Eric, but no, it was Nakia. She had the formula from the jump. But that isn't to say that Eric didn't help contribute to where T'Challa ended up starting this global outreach. He doesn't pick Nigeria, South Africa or Mozambique. He chooses a place where the conflict all began, with the sins of the fathers, in that high-rise in Oakland. That's it for now. Hopefully there isn't such a big gap between this video and the next one, but as I was making it, all this Black Panther news and behind the scenes talk came up and I wanted to include it in the video, so there you go. But anyways, bye for now.